Hello and welcome to the entire plot of the Tandem Read from Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass. Today we are going to be continuing our series where we are covering Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn in chronological order. And today that is going to look like Tower of Dawn chapters 15 through 17 and Empire of Storms chapters 19 through 23, though not necessarily in that order. Tower of Dawn chapter 15. We are in Yrene and Kale's POV as they are at the self-defense lessons, and Kale has summoned some guards to be the bodies to practice having these girls flip grown men onto their backs. And of course, the healers are absolutely enjoying it. Some of the guards arguably think it's really fun. Others, I'm sure, maybe not so much. But Yrene is happy to see the girls happy, especially because they just had that vigil last night for the healer who was killed in the library, and they all were super sad and on edge literally just the night before. So she's happy to see everyone giggling, having a good time. And then also the girls are just feeling really empowered with this training. So it's a win for everybody, except for, of course, Kale. After the lesson, they start heading back to the castle, and Yrene, who's on this amazing high from having an amazing time, frankly, at this lesson, is wondering why Kale is so quiet and not talking to her. He eventually speaks up and says it is because she quite literally encouraged 5 teenage girls to manhandle him like a rag doll, and he really didn't appreciate it, and it was frankly very devastating for him and very embarrassing. So he leaves her to go to his rooms once they get to the castle, of course, and before Yrene can follow him to begin their healing session, which they have to do, Caution walks up to say hello to Yrene. He tells her that he heard what happened in the library, and of course he had some of his own personal guards sent to the tour for her and her healer friends' protection. She's obviously really grateful, but is still keeping her distance because there's like this weird thing where she's friend-zoned Caution really, really hard, and he's had a really hard time accepting that apparently. But he actually acknowledges her rejection, and he's like, hey, like, I know you just want to be friends and you don't what I want, but I still want you to be safe, so please just take this as a friend wanting to make sure you're safe. So props to Caution for that, because like I think Caution up until this point has not shown much emotional intelligence. However, how he handles this conversation with Yrene is kind of changing my mind a little bit. After her conversation with Caution, she starts to go to Kale's rooms because they have a healing session, when she actually runs into Kale right around the corner. I guess he decided to stick around and overhear the whole conversation. And so now she's mad at him for eavesdropping, and he's mad at her for disrespecting his insecurity around his newfound disability. So they're like storming back to the room together, both just like seething and angry, when they see Nesrin in the room. Kale tells her that he was able to ride a horse, and she is so excited, like freaking out. She cannot believe this is happening. And she's like, great, maybe this way now you can meet my family. So we can just like hop you on horse and you can go meet my family. And also she wants to show him around the city because although she has not lived here majority of her life, she still is she hasn't like outright said it, but she has implied multiple times that she feels more at home here than she does in Aderlin. So it's almost like her kind of showing him around her home, and also just kind of showing him around her culture, I'm sure would be just like a really fun and exciting thing for her to do. In her excitement, it's like, okay, I'll leave you guys to healing, and she leaves, and then Kale and Yrene are back to stone cold angry at each other again. Yrene keeps getting on Kale that he can't just keep simmering in his anger quietly, and he needs to start opening up. So he just says, okay, everything I thought, everything I planned and wanted, it's gone. All I have left is my king and this ridiculous, slim scrap of hope that we survived this war, and I can find a way to make something of everything that crumbled in my hand. And Yrene doesn't have a response. If anything, this to her is very telling of where Kale is, and she also recognizes the fact that he even verbalized this is a lot, and so she just goes to hand him the leather bit to begin their training, almost like a silent acknowledgement of what he's just said. And right before she goes to heal him, and before he puts this bit in his mouth, he says, just to be clear, is your grudge against me or Aderlin? And her response is, soldiers from Aderlin burned my mother alive when I was 11. And before Kale even has a chance to respond or frankly even process this, she shoots them right into their healing session. Tower of Dawn, chapter 16. We're actually going to be in Kale's POV while he is in his little magically induced coma. Very similar. Okay, I'm drawing this correlation for you. This is not a correlation made in the books, but I do think we would be remiss to ignore it. Do you remember in Heir of Fire when Selena had to cross that like magical cemetery thing full of all the whites, and when she was stopped by Valg, she was forced to relive every traumatic thing that ever happened to her and everything she experienced that was deep-rooted in guilt? You'll very quickly learn that what Kale is going through during these medically induced comas is actually very similar to what Aelin went through in that time. The first thing that Kale shares with us that he sees is Nehemia dead on the bed and an angry Selena in front of him trying to kill him. You remember that from Crown of Midnight. And then it shows him and the family that he left to follow Dorian. So we have met Kale's dad, Daddy Westfall, if you will. Horrible, horrible man. We do not like him. He's a slimy, crusty man. However, we have not met Kale's little brother and his mother yet, but he sees all three of them here now. Then he sees a flutter of light in the distance, but then it flickers out and he falls right back into a pit of nothingness and pain, or at least that's how SJM describes it. So he's basically reliving all of these traumatic things, every regret he's ever had, and then he starts to see these lights flickering occasionally. So we can assume here that as he's going through some of the darkest parts of his life, symbolically, he is seeing light in a literal sense. That is Yreen's healing magic making its way through the darkness, right? Eventually, he shoots awake and Yreen is bleeding from her nose. And listen, if you ever watch Vampire Diaries, you know typically when a magical being starts bleeding from their nose, it usually means they're overexerting themselves and they need to chill out. So Kale offers to help her out and he has her lie down on the bed. While he has her laying back and they're trying to get her nose to stop bleeding, he asks her what she sees when she is in his scar, I guess. She's like healing a scar, but she answers that she can see the memories in Morath and all the horrible experiments that happened there, okay? But then she could hear Kale screaming, so she decided to follow the sound, because I guess she can like walk through this memory. So it's almost like she's also in sort of magically induced coma of sorts, but she's not like knocked out like Kale is. She's like actually, so it's more like her subconscious is in this magical memory. It's kind of crazy. I'm very interested to see how this is depicted in a TV show or movie. And I can say that 1,000 times, but I just really am, okay? But then there was a thing waiting for her and she panicked and jumped at it and it kind of shot her out of this memory and back to reality, and that's when she realized that her nose was bleeding. So that's really that. So we get to see what's happening in both of their psyches at the time of this healing, and so now we're just focused on getting Yreen's nose to stop bleeding. And so Kale decides to distract her from that. He's gonna be like, so that thing you said right before I went into a coma about your mother, would you maybe want to elaborate on that? But he more like, he's not asking it in a sassy way. I know I put it kind of sassy, but that's just my personality. He's more asking as an apology. Like, you can tell he definitely has a lot of, not pity, but you can tell in this moment, like, he really feels for her and like her loss. And he just asks her like a little bit more about her mother. And she basically says that she only made it out alive because of her mother's sacrifice. Then Kale, in an interesting turn of events here, I mean, some of y'all might have been thinking it, but Yreen and Sorsha are very similar, not only just in their appearance, but also just in their demeanors. And then on top of that, like, Kale has a lot of trauma surrounding both of them now. And so he actually shares the story of Sorsha with Yreen. And that actually turns into him opening up about all the guilt he has about everything that happened to Dorian the day that Sorsha was executed. Kale says, "It should have been me. I always planned for it to be me instead." Okay, so I know I always talk about how much I love Kale and Dorian's friendship. Like, I think that they have that kind of like insane friendship loyalty and deep care for each other that most people like really desire in a friendship. However, it starts to be really drawn out in Tower of Dawn how toxic it is on Kale's side. It's to the point where Kale puts Dorian so much in front of himself in every aspect of everything. And like, you also have to acknowledge, like, there's an imbalance of power there. So there's also that dynamic. Like, Dorian isn't just his best friend, it's also his king now. So you can argue that like there's a lot of nuances there, so it doesn't really count. But I think in this sense, and in this statement, we see a unhealthy aspect of Kale's friendship with Dorian in the way that Kale's idea identity is in Dorian. When Dorian lost himself, Kale lost himself. And I don't think that's ever healthy. But then again, I'm not a therapist, so moving on. So this actually brings Urine to tears. And Urine is wondering if she has it backwards. Like, she thought that she had to heal Kale emotionally in order to heal him physically. But she's starting to wonder if maybe the work that they're doing to heal him physically is in turn helping him emotionally. But she also recognizes that it has to get uglier before it gets prettier. So although he's like kind of crashing out emotionally, like, this can be constituted as healing. So Kale pulls the ultimate rom-com go-to move to wipe away Urine's tears, of course, when Kaja walks into the room and Urine freaks out and like quickly looks away. Cause like, okay, I'll set the scene for you. When Urine's nose started bleeding, she laid down on Kale's bed. Cause like they're doing everything in his chamber. So like his bed is by the couch. And then Kale came over to like talk to her and make sure she was doing okay and to help her stop the bleeding. And he's paralyzed, so he has to also be laying down on the bed. So they're both laying down in this bed together, and he just wiped away her tears. So he's clearly very up close and in her business. And Kaja, who is a servant, who is also known to be a spy, for which sibling yet we don't know, but she walks in to see this, and obviously this doesn't look good for Urine and Kale, and also like that information could have different consequences depending on who is paying Kaja for information on what Kale is up to, and Kale and Urine. But before we can harp too much on the actual impact it's gonna have that Kaja walked in at this really awkward time, when Urine quickly looks away from Kale, because she's trying to immediately make it look as unsuspicious as possible. In my opinion, the fact that she like launches herself away from Kale when Kaja walks in probably makes her look worse, not better. But when Urine goes to like turn away from Kale as fast as possible, she looks towards his feet and sees his toes moving. I hate to do this to you, but we're actually going to jump books to Empire of Storms. There are obviously, like, the fact that Kale's toes are moving is a huge deal, but for right now we need to go to Empire of Storms chapter 19 and step into Alide and Lorcan's POV. We have not heard from them or read about them in a while, I think. I know we didn't talk about them at all in episode 5. I think we barely talked about them in episode 4. So, let's see what they're up to. So they're obviously traveling through the woods together, and Alide has a lot of questions that she wants to ask him. Like, for example, why exactly were you following me around in the woods in the first place? I feel like this is probably the first question I would ask, but she decides for whatever reason that she's not gonna ask that yet, because he also has questions that she doesn't want to answer. And Lorcan very clearly has shown that he's a scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of guy. So she's like, he won't just volunteer information for me without getting information from me. So she decides to keep that stuff to herself for now. When we find out that they are a mile away now from the river. So they are cooking up a scheme in this moment. Alide is encouraging him to look less fey and more human, and she is taking off her riding leathers and ties up her hair in, quote, a married woman's hairstyle. Okay, so this is how they are planning to cross the river. There are guards stationed on the river, and they're doing inspections of everyone's wagons, as well as like a little interrogation, as you will, before they let people pass. And the book does imply, with the context, that these are men from Morath, and they're obviously looking for Alide right now. So that's why they're going out of their way to like create these identities. So they start to come up to the bridge when Alide realizes that the biggest giveaway is going to be her limp. So Lorcan actually goes ahead and he uses his magic to create almost kind of like an invisible brace for her. So her limp actually goes away, and Lorcan is helping take, obviously temporarily, but Lorcan's helping her walk. But the closer they get to the bridge, Alide starts getting more and more nervous, and Lorcan suggests that they go to the tavern, like right off to the side where the bridge line is, because there's a line to cross this bridge, I guess. Lorcan suggests they go to this tavern and get a bite to eat. So they go to this tavern and they find a table in the back corner near a party of 8, okay? And we are about to get to know this party of 8 really well and launch one of the, to this day, weirdest side quests that I still to this day do not understand why it was necessary for this to happen. I feel like Sarah J. Maas knew that Elide and Lorcan had to have their own story, but didn't know what to do. And because of like the kind of dark nature of these two books, felt like she needed something light, fluffy, and fun. So let's just begin, shall we? Elide notices off the bat that one of the ladies in this party of 8 is observing her, so she forces Lorcan to hold her hand because they are parading as a married couple. And this is mostly to protect Elide, because she knows, she's like, a single woman traveling alone is suspicious enough, and then on top of that, like, if I'm married, like, some people won't bat an eye at me and I'll be significantly less interesting, but I could become prey for the wrong people if I'm just a single woman traveling alone. So Lorcan begrudgingly pretends to be her husband. While they are eating their food, this party of 8 off to the side starts having a very loud conversation, and we learn very quickly that they're a performance troupe. In other words, they're quite literally like circus performers. They are a traveling carnival, if you will. So Elide turns towards them, and mind you, with no heads up to Lorcan whatsoever, she has the audacity to turn to them and say, "Me and my husband have been looking for a performing troupe." Okay, so she tells them that she is a fortune teller and Lorcan is a sword thrower, and they used to travel with a carnival of mirrors with Baba Yellowlegs until the troupe dissolved after the mysterious death of Baba Yellowlegs. Okay guys, in Crown of Midnight, for Holland's birthday, the little demon child that is Dorian's little brother, the queen has a carnival come to the castle, and it's there for like a hot minute, and Baba Yellowlegs was heading up the whole carnival. And then Selena killed Baba Yellowlegs, and that's why she's a witch killer, and that's why Manon hunted her down, and that's like all the things. Like, it's so crazy. Obviously, Elide and Lorcan were never part of Baba Yellowlegs' troupe, but it's just so funny the way that Sarah J. Maas is constantly drawing connections, even in like the 5th and 6th book, to book 1. So the circus troupe hesitates, but they eventually offer them a temporary position in the troupe. So basically this is Lorcan and Elide's plan and cover story to get across the bridge and be less conspicuous. Inconspicuous? To be less sketchy seeming. So they join them on their wagon to cross the bridge, and so Elide and Lorcan have joined the circus for the sake of crossing a bridge. And you would think in this moment, like, oh, then when they cross the bridge, they'll just decide no longer to be a part of the circus. You would be wrong. They quite literally here are joining a circus. So while they're in their circus wagon, waiting in line to cross the bridge, one of the circus performers starts talking about what happened in Rifthold. And Lorcan and Elide are like, what do you mean, what happened in Rifthold? They tell them about the witch attacks and how witches are basically running Adderlin right now. The man also then mentions Aelin and how no one really knows where she is right now. But then Elide asks him what his thoughts and opinions are on Aelin, and he says that he's basically heard everything, both negative and positive. People think that she'll bring the end of the world, and then some people think she will liberate the world and make it a better place. And his conclusion is that, you know what, I don't think the world can get worse off than it already is. I am optimistic, and this is like really encouraging to Elide. But Lorcan, in his POV, can't help but realize that there's no such thing as a better world, but unfortunately Marion believes there is. And remember, Marion is the name that Elide gave Lorcan, so Lorcan still thinks her name is Marion. And as much as Lorcan wishes he was wrong, he knows that the only thing waiting for her at the end of this war is a grave. All sunshine and daisies from Lorcan. They eventually get through the entire line during that conversation. They are inspected by the guards, and then they're able to get on their wagons and continue on to their next location to set up for a carnival. Let's jump back to Tower of Dawn, chapter 17 specifically, and we're going to be in Nesserin's POV as she is visiting her family. So the kids are at school, and it's just her aunt and uncle, and of course the guards that Sartok said that he would send to protect her family. And there's a lot here, but really in summary, it just goes to show that they have a very loving, sweet family dynamic. Like, this is one of those safe, friendly family dynamics that most people wish they had. It's just really cozy, really sweet, and you can just tell that they deeply care for each other. They're talking a little bit more about her father, and she basically admits that as happy as she is to know that she's safe, it's still killing her to not know where they're hiding. But her uncle, of course, says, like, if he hears anything else from her father, he will let her know. And then he asks her to sing for them. Now, here's the thing. There is, like, this whole subplot that apparently Nesserin is, like, the best singer ever. And when she sings, the whole world stops and stares for a while, everyone is just like enamored. Like, she has the voice of an angel. I don't know. I feel like that is a trope that whenever I read it, it gives me major pick-me-girl energy. It's like, okay, so you mean to tell me that she has like the most insanely beautiful voice ever? And they're like, her voice, her singing voice could stop wars. Could it though? That's not all mentioned in depth in this chapter. Her singing ability is discussed a couple times throughout this book, but literally every single time that there is something talking about Nesrin singing, I cringe so hard, because I am not exaggerating to you when I say that like they pretend like she has the most insane singing voice in existence. Listen, maybe she does have the most angelic, amazing singing voice ever, but I felt the need to get that off my chest, because anytime, I think, for the rest of the series, when I bring up that someone talks about Nesrin's singing voice, you may get an eye roll from me, and you may get some attitude, and I think it's only fair that you have some context as to why I cringe so hard at that. This is also where we learned that she's really shy about her super angelic, amazing singing voice. Like, she only sings for family. What do you mean my mic turned off 6 minutes into filming? Oh, that makes me a little mad. Okay. That's fine. It's fine. I'm fine. I apologize for any bad audio quality up until this point. I think you guys get now how I feel about Nesrin singing, so I will move on. Nesrin says, you know what? I'm not here to sing. Instead, I'm here to give you a warning about what happened in the Tor library, which is why she came when the kids are gone. Obviously, she didn't want to freak out the kids. So she tells them about the dangers that her and her dad faced while they were in Adderlin, and how those dangers may be very close to home for them. She also expresses that she feels like it's her fault that the Valg are here right now, but of course they just reassure her that they are happy to see her, and they have guards that can take the children to and from school and take extra precautions and just do what you need to do, and we will be all right. Then her aunt suggests that next time she comes, she should bring her mans with her, and Nesrin gets all bashful and blushes, and she's like, sorry, Kale's just been really busy focusing on his healing and stuff, and her aunt is like, Kale? I'm not talking about Kale, I'm talking about Prince Sartok. Apparently news has gotten around that Nesrin and Prince Sartok rode around on Kadara together, and so that got back to the aunt and uncle, and they are asking her, like, so is it true? Like, are you and Prince Sartok hanging out? And did he take you on a fly on his ruck? And Nesrin is all blushy, and she's like, no, it was nothing. Like, you know, whatever. He was just being friendly, and he took me off on a spin. And then her aunt gets really serious and tells her, the rucks will not fear wyverns. That is a crazy statement, but is she wrong? All right, we are going to jump back to Empire of Storms, chapter 20, and this is going to be in Rowan's POV. So him and Dorian have made it to Skulls Bay, yay, before the Valg hunters, and Rowan is just happy to be sleeping not in a boat. So Rowan has not slept at all. He's been mostly on guard, and then even when he was like kind of dazing in and out of sleep and Dorian was on guard, he was constantly using his magic to move the boat. So he is ready to absolutely pass out in a bed. Also, I'll remind you that he also did not sleep for like the couple days that he constantly flew to pick up Dorian. Okay, so he has not slept in a hot minute. And they are currently in Skulls Bay walking towards an inn so that Rowan can finally get some sleep. They're walking through the ships, and a little side note, they see Shipbreaker. And do you guys remember Shipbreaker? That's like that chain that Aelin and Sam like demolished back in Assassin's Blade. But I guess they fixed it after Sam and Aelin ruined it. So they're walking to their inn when Rowan feels a shift in the air, and Dorian actually does too. But it's not Valg. Something's making their magic senses tingle, but they can tell it's not Valg. Let's jump to Dorian's POV, because he's actually never been in Skulls Bay before. I mean, I don't think Rowan has necessarily either, but it's crazy for Dorian to see it specifically, because Dorian has been sheltered in a castle most of his life. He has not really traveled much, so it's cool for him to see different places. And he is especially curious to see Rolf's infamous magic tattoo. Remember, we talked a lot about that in Assassin's Blade as well. So there's a storm looming over the island, so they're booking to the inn that they plan to stay in when both of their magic senses tingle, and they look and see that their senses are tingling in the direction of a tavern called the Sea Dragon, like the Mycenian sea dragons. Interesting. So they step into the Sea Dragon, and a barmaid reveals that the Captain Ralph is waiting for them in his office, and he knows that they're here. Dorian didn't know what to expect from the Lord of Pirates, but a dark-haired man, a day past 30, if that, lounging on a red velvet chaise was not it. Empire of Storms chapter 21, Dorian first notices Ralph is wearing gloves, potentially to cover the rumored magic tattoo that Dorian really wants to see, but Ralph off the bat says to Rowan that he thinks that they're going to get along just fine because Rowan is a man of many tattoos, if you remember. But then he turns to Dorian, and he's actually very aware that he is King Dorian of Aderlin, and informs him that Parrington issued a decree saying that he liberated Aderlin and King Dorian is now a traitor. The decree also states that anyone caught allying with Aelin and Dorian in the war is now his enemy. Then he had Holland named as his heir and the crowned prince. Okay, so remember what I just said earlier. Holland is this tiny little demon child, okay? Literally, like, at the age of, 7 in the first book, Dorian was, like, something in his soul rotted, okay? Holland is think of the worst possible child you can imagine, and Holland is way worse. Like, he's just horrible. So this little Chucky child thing is now the heir, and Parrington is the current king. So Dorian obviously is taking all this news super duper well, and Ralph says that he doesn't want to ally with anyone, and he just wants to leave the islands out of it. Obviously sensing that the reason why Dorian and Aelin are here are to try to get Ralph as an ally. So then Rowan changes the conversation to the Northern Islands. Okay, I think this is really interesting because remember when we talked about the islands in Assassin's Blade, we heard weird noises and we saw weird creatures from the distance on those islands. If you read Assassin's Blade first, which I don't know why you would have done that, you were clearly very misadvised if you did, that would have meant nothing to you and you probably don't even remember that because it was such a weird side comment for them to make. But if you read it when you should have, which is like right before or right after Heir of Fire, you probably made the connection that these things were definitely some level of Valg creature. So Rowan is asking specifically about that scenario. Rowan then asks about the security of this island, asking if the Valg from the Northern Islands infiltrated this island. Ralph reveals that they had, but there was a full-blown battle and him and his pirates killed most of them after one of Parrington's generals tried to steal the island from them. Ralph says, "But I am again the pirate lord of Skulls Bay, and if the Eastern Islands are as far as Morath plans to go, then Parrington and his beasts can have them. The dead end is barely more than caves and rock anyways." So Dorian then asks, okay, so like what kind of beasts are we talking about? Ralph answers that they are sea wyverns, okay? So think about like Braxos and what the witches ride, but they're for the ocean, okay? So they already have an insane amount of Valg land creatures, okay? We know about the Ilkin. Then we have the wyverns in the sky for the aerial army. And now we're learning that Parrington is also, or Erewhon technically, Erewhon is building a Valg navy of basically sea dragons. They're sea wyverns. Ralph reveals that during this battle, many of his pirates were taken and not killed. But when they were returned, they were wearing rings, and they claimed that they were let go, but they very quickly learned that these men were no longer themselves, and he had them beheaded. Because even when he took off the rings, they were still very clearly infested by something else. Rowan then corrects him and informs him that King Parrington is really just Erewhon. Rowan then asked Ralph if he would consider joining them, or at least letting them use the island. Dorian mentions how, as his hand, Kale is currently working in the southern continent, trying to get the Khakan to ally with them, when Ralph says they will not come, especially with the latest news. What is the latest news, you may ask? Ralph is not going to tell us. 2 other men who are entering the office are going to tell us, and they're not just any men. They are 2 Fae males, Fenris and Gavriel, from Rowan's cadre that worked for Maeve. Empire of Storms, Chapter 22, Gavriel reveals that Maeve's armada is sailing for the continent. This is also the news that Aelin, Adian, and Lysandra just found out, but we're going to get more information that they got originally. Maeve is not going to Morath like Aelin assumed. She's actually going to Eelway, which is very interesting. We'll learn why very soon. Dorian assumes EOA is just a target because Maeve knows how special it is to Aelin. When Ralph asks if he is expected to host the one and only Aelin Galathynius, and I will remind you that he has banned Celaena from ever coming onto his island again. He, however, does not know that Celaena and Aelin are in fact the same person. Honestly, the absolute humor behind the fact that Celaena and Aelin are the same person and how many people like know both of them but as separate people is so funny to me. Like first the lead and now Captain Ralph. So let's jump to Dorian's POV because he is spiraling still from the news about Holland being the heir, and anyone who's caught allying with him is going to be considered an enemy of Parrington's or Erewhon's, and so it's just a lot obviously for him to process. But they finally get to their rooms, and instead of going to sleep they're going to talk with Fenris and Gavriel about all of this without Rolf sitting there and listening into everything. So Fenris and Gavriel instantly start asking where Lorcan is, and Rowan reveals he doesn't know where he is right this second, of course, implying that he does know some stuff. So they reveal that they are here because Maeve ordered them under the blood oath to hunt down and kill Lorcan. Empire of Storms chapter 23. And obviously, like, the fact that they have to hunt down and kill Lorcan is like a lot, and we'll process that in a second, but there is like a tiny little thing here. And I honestly do think this is a mistake on Sarah J. Maas's part, and I don't know how an editor didn't catch this, and to me it is one of the funniest things in Throne of Glass. So Rowan points out that it makes sense that both Gavriel and Fenris were sent to do this because Lorcan, like Rowan, was one of the stronger of the cadre, and it would clearly take more than one of them to take him down. So he's like, oh, it makes sense that Maeve sent 2 of you. And they revealed that Maeve actually sent 3 of them, okay? That Vaughn was sent with them, but Vaughn decided to go north because his animal form is like a type of bird, whereas Fenris and Gavriel are both like, one is a wolf and the other one's a mountain lion. So it's like, okay, like they obviously need to go together, and then the guy who's the bird can just like fly around and cover more territory on his own. So that is Vaughn. He's one of the cadre. So we learned that like they're on the same mission, but Vaughn is in a whole different area. We never talk about Vaughn again. Like, he literally just ceases to exist in the series, which is so funny because I now want you to think about everything that happens from now on, going forward. Remember that Vaughn is somewhere just on this mission looking for Lorcan, while Gavriel and Fenris go on the most insane side quests that you've ever experienced. So it is just really funny to me because I'll just tell you right now, we are going to finish this entire series and Vaughn is still looking for Lorcan, completely unaware of everything that's happened since this moment. Anyways, I think that's so funny. And it was clearly, I think, a mistake by Sarah J. Maas, and it wasn't caught by an editor. Either that, or I think maybe there were like some bonus chapters about Vaughn that got taken out. I'm not really sure. Anyways, so Fenris and Gavriel came here specifically to question Ralph to see if he knew anything about Lorcan's whereabouts. Interesting. And then Rowan asks them specifically what their blood oath to Maeve was, and when he hears it, he notices that there is a loophole because Gavriel wants to make a bargain, knowing clearly that Rowan knows more than he's letting on. So he wants Rowan's insight as to where Lorcan might be, because this loophole basically is that they can get Lorcan by any means necessary. So Rowan is like, okay, what if the means is to help and serve Aelin in this war? Because she sent Lorcan on a mission that's going to result in Lorcan coming back to her. So the best way to find Lorcan is to stay with Aelin, and you might as well be useful if you're going to hang around, because we won't let you hang around otherwise. And then Lorcan's gonna come straight to you when he comes back to Aelin. And if you're confused of like, why would Lorcan come back to Aelin? She's hoping that Lorcan will collect the other 2 word keys for her. Potentially, that's the best case scenario. And let's say he does get them. He's gonna realize once he has all 3 pieces together, because the one piece that he thinks he has right now is a fake. Once he puts all 3 together, he's going to realize, oh, this doesn't work. The one Aelin gave me is a fake. So then he's going to have to go back to Aelin to get the real one. So that is why Rowan is under the impression that Lorcan will be coming back to Aelin. Fenris can't even believe that Rowan has the audacity to even ask them to serve another queen, when Rowan says, isn't that what you want, Fenris? To serve my queen? You've been pulling on that leash for months. Well, here's your shot. Crazy. So I guess, I mean, it's kind of been hinted at here and there that Fenris is not really happy serving Maeve at all. He's really only serving Maeve because his twin brother got into a tight spot. And Maeve wanted Fenris, but Fenris would not swear the blood oath. So then Maeve got Fenris's twin and brother to swear the blood oath, and she was taking advantage of his brother. And she made a deal that she would go lax on his brother and cut him some slack if he also swore the blood oath. So Fenris never really wanted to get into the scenario in the first place. Maeve really did just kind of blackmail him into it. I mean, like, he had a choice, but he didn't have a choice because he loved and cared for his brother. So Rowan is kind of calling him out on that. Like, why are you pretending like you actually want to serve Maeve? The other loophole is that she gave no language around finding Lorcan immediately or as soon as humanly possible. So it's also not going to be going against the contract to just hang out with them and wait for Lorcan to come to them. So Rowan can tell that they are considering it, and he decides that it's a time of war, and desperate times call for desperate measures, so he is going to take it one step further, and he tells them that helping Aelin would also mean helping Gavriel's son, and if he sticks around, at least to meet Aelin and hear her out, for real this time, because they've met her before, but like while she was in Maeve's throne room, and we all remember how that went. So he was like, if you wait for her to come to Skull's Bay and hear her out and see what she's all about, in turn you will also, Gavriel, meet your son who's coming with her. And Rowan feels bad for kind of outing Aedion like that, but at the same time, this was war and he had no intention of losing it. And I feel like that is the perfect place to end part 6. This is going to be a really long series, but I am intentionally trying to keep these episodes shorter so that I can actually crank them out to you consistently on a week-to-week level. That being said, if you are not caught up, because I'm absolutely cranking these episodes out week after week, you should definitely check out the entire plot playlist and get caught up, or you should subscribe so you get notified whenever I post a entire plot episode or whenever I post just a fun bookish video.